Last summer, I moved to a quiet suburban area. I was excited for a fresh start after my breakup. The neighborhood looked perfect, neatly lined houses and lush green lawns. I thought I would finally find some peace and inspiration for my freelance work. But from my very first night, I had strange experiences with my neighbors that I can't shake off. On my third evening, I heard tapping on the wall next to my bedroom. I figured it was the plumbing, so I tried to ignore it. The room felt unusually cold, like autumn was creeping in. I turned up my music, but the tapping grew louder, rhythmic, and persistent. It sent chills down my spine. I pulled the blankets tighter around me, hoping to drown out the sound. I told myself it was just stress, but that didn't help ease my fear. Over the next few days, the tapping became more intense. It felt like it was calling out to me whenever I tried to sleep. My neighbor, an older man, often stood in his yard staring at me. He hardly blinked. I tried to wave, but he just kept looking, his gaze steady and unsettling. When night fell, I heard laughter floating from his house. But I never saw anyone else with him. It felt wrong, like I was being watched, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was listening too. That evening, I sat on my porch with my sketchbook, the tapping louder than ever. It felt like a heartbeat. I slammed my sketchbook shut and stood up, feeling anxious. I walked closer to the wall, heart racing. I pressed my ear against it, hoping for silence. Instead, I heard low whispers, barely audible but distinct. Fear shot through me. I stepped back and glanced at the man next door. He had moved closer to the fence, still staring. One night, I sat up in bed after yet another round of tapping. The cold air wrapped around me. I wanted to knock on his door, but the thought terrified me. I could see him still watching me from his yard, face blank, eyes fixed on mine. Then I heard the laughter again. My instinct screamed at me to stay put. I told myself it was all in my head, but then I heard his voice. "Why are you here?" It pierced through the silence, clear as day. I turned to answer, my throat dry, but nobody was there. The room felt colder, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. Shadows danced in the corners of my eyes, and I couldn't tell if I was imagining them or if he was watching again. That summer changed everything for me. I thought I was escaping, but instead I found something I never could have expected. I never did figure out what happened with my neighbors, but their strange behavior still haunts me. I can't help but wonder what I truly invited into my life when I moved there. The next day, during my lunch break, I took a walk around the neighborhood, trying to push away my fears. The sun was shining, but I still felt heavy. I needed to find some normalcy. As I strolled down the street, I noticed other neighbors. They all seemed perfectly ordinary, mowing lawns or watering flowers, but they all had the same uneasy glance, a shared secret behind their smiles. When I returned home, the tapping started again. It was relentless. I grabbed my phone and started researching my neighborhood. I was looking for anything unusual when I stumbled upon a local forum. There were whispers about strange happenings in the area. Most posts were vague, but one caught my attention. Someone wrote about a previous resident who disappeared. They mentioned something odd about the man next door, but I couldn't decipher if it was a joke or something more serious. That evening, I decided to confront the situation. I needed to know who lived next to me. I walked to his front door with a mix of dread and determination. I knocked, my heart racing as I waited. No answer. I tried again, this time louder. Still nothing. I glanced through the window, but the curtains were drawn tight. Frustrated and uneasy, I turned to leave when I heard it again, laughter. It rolled over the lawn from the backyard. This time it was accompanied by faint music, a song I didn't recognize. I looked over the fence, and my heart pounded faster when I noticed something strange. There were small wooden puppets lined up along his yard. Their faces were painted, but they looked eerily lifelike. As soon as I spotted them, the laughter stopped. I froze in place. The air thickened. It was like being caught in a terrifying play. Then I saw him emerge from the back door, holding one of the puppets. His eyes met mine, unblinking, and I felt a wave of cold wash over me. "Why are you here?" he asked again, the same question as before, but this time it felt different, more demanding. The way he held the puppet was unsettling, as if it were more than just a decoration. My throat tightened. I didn't have an answer. Without thinking, I turned and rushed back inside my house. I locked the door behind me. The tapping began once more, but now it felt like it was pounding against my skull. I wanted to scream, to call someone, anyone. In that moment, I glanced out the window. I couldn't help myself. What I saw made my blood run cold. The man was standing at the edge of my yard, holding the puppet up as if presenting it to me, grinning in a way that made it clear he knew something I didn't. Cautiously, I stepped back away from the window. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening was more than just an odd neighbor. I could sense it deep inside me. I had to figure this out. As fear tightened around me, I felt a resolve shift. I wouldn't let this strange and frightening presence control my life. Then, everything went dark. When I blinked my eyes open, I found myself on the floor. Panic clawed at me as fragments of what had just happened slipped through my fingers. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing. The tapping had stopped, replaced by a suffocating silence that made my skin crawl. I stumbled toward the window to check if the man was still out there. An empty yard greeted me. My breath hitched. Had it all been a delusion? I leaned closer to the glass, scanning the darkening street. My neighbors' houses loomed like silent sentinels, their shapes twisting under the fading light. I forced myself to breathe. I needed to be logical. The odd laughter, the puppets, the man, they couldn't just be figments of my imagination. There had to be an explanation. I turned back to my phone. I searched for more information about the neighborhood and the previous resident. That's when I found it, an archived news article. The headline read, "Mysterious Disappearance in Quiet Neighborhood." I clicked it open, eyes racing down the page. The article detailed how a man named Thomas Reed had vanished without a trace 5 years prior. His last known whereabouts? Right next door. My stomach twisted into a knot. I read on, learning that neighbors had reported strange occurrences around Thomas's house in the weeks leading to his disappearance. Unexplained noises, odd events, and then he was simply gone. I felt the walls closing in. A chill swept down my spine. I decided to risk it and stepped outside. The air was cool and damp. I needed to confront the fear, to see if the puppets were still there. I edged over to the fence, heart pounding in my chest. The puppets stood in the yard, shadows stretching long across the grass. As I approached, the unmistakable sound of laughter erupted again. It was a high-pitched giggle that echoed through the quiet dark. I whipped around, searching for the source, but found nothing. My pulse raced. I felt the urge to run, to escape this growing nightmare, but something kept my feet planted where they were. That's when I saw it. A small wooden puppet had moved from its place in the yard, now standing at the edge of the fence, its painted eyes staring directly at me. I blinked, wondering if I was losing my mind. "This isn't real," I whispered to myself. Then I heard it again, the man's voice. "Why are you here?" I gasped, spinning around. He was standing at the door of his house, shadows bending around him. His expression was unreadable,
and the puppet dangled from his fingertips, swinging slightly as if alive. I couldn't tell if he was angry or just curious. "Get away from those things!" I shouted, driven by an instinct I couldn't explain. His grin widened. "They just want to play." With a sense of urgency, I turned and ran back inside, slamming the door behind me. The laughter followed me like a whisper. I pressed my back against the door, breathing heavily as dread settled back in my chest. I could no longer ignore it. I had crossed some invisible line. I needed to find out what happened to Thomas Reed, and why the man next door was still here, with his puppets and that unsettling smile. Just then, my phone buzzed. A new message from the forum. I opened it, and my heart stopped.
"You shouldn't have gone outside." I stood frozen, my heart racing as I stared at my phone. "You shouldn't have gone outside." The words felt like a punch to my gut. I quickly scrolled through the comments on the forum, looking for some kind of guidance, something to tell me what to do next. Most were just noise, people arguing about the best conspiracy theories. But one caught my eye. "Stay indoors, it's safer." Great advice. I could already feel the tension creeping back in. I needed to focus. I took a few deep breaths and decided to search for other articles about Thomas Reed. Maybe there were more details I missed. As I sat down on my couch, I felt a sudden unease. The air in the room felt thick, almost suffocating. I tried to shake it off, but every time I glanced at the window, it felt like someone, or something, was watching me. An unexpected noise jolted me from my thoughts. It sounded like a tapping, soft but persistent. I shot to my feet, heart pounding. I approached the window cautiously, peering through the glass. The yard remained empty, but I could feel the weight of something unseen pressing against my chest. "Just the wind," I muttered. I turned back to my phone, desperate to distract myself. I found another article about Thomas, but this one was different. It mentioned a woman, a neighbor, who claimed to have seen something strange the night he disappeared. I quickly read on. She spoke of hearing laughter and seeing puppets moving on their own. Her fear resonated with what I had just experienced. But then I read something that made my skin crawl. The puppets, they weren't just puppets. They were his friends, she claimed. I didn't even know what that meant. I was too afraid. I tossed my phone onto the couch and tried to shake the feeling that loomed over me. But the tapping returned, insistent and rhythmic. I stepped closer to the door and hesitated. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice sounding small in the dim light. Quiet. Then I heard it, a whisper so soft I could barely understand. "Help me." Shivers coursed down my spine. It had come from outside. The urge to run hit me like a wave, but I fought against it. I couldn't show fear. I needed to find out what was happening, no matter what it took. I grabbed a flashlight and slipped on my shoes, my hands shaking with anxiety. The door felt heavy as I gripped the handle, preparing to face whatever awaited me outside. Taking a deep breath, I swung the door wide open. The laughter erupted again, but this time it was closer, floating through the air as if it were alive. I stepped outside, light illuminating the yard. The puppets hadn't moved, but I felt their presence weighing down on me. And then I noticed something new. A puppet lying against the fence, face down in the grass. That wasn't there before. I knelt to pick it up, heart hammering in my chest. As I turned it over, a flicker of memory resurfaced, sharp and vivid. I'd seen this puppet before. In the news article, it was one Thomas used, a clown with a sad expression. I dropped it as if it burned my fingers. This can't be happening. That's when I heard the voice again, this time much clearer, and it sent ice through my veins. You shouldn't have found that. I shot up, ready to bolt back inside, but a figure emerged from the shadows. The man from next door stepped into the light, his eyes fixated on the puppet. You've made a mistake. Panic surged through me as I took a step back, heart racing faster than ever. I wanted to scream, but the words failed me. The chilling realization washed over me. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I turned to run, but the man took a step forward. "Wait," he called, his voice almost pleading. "You need to listen to me." Every instinct screamed at me to bolt, but somehow curiosity held me in place. I needed answers. "What do you know?" I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. He glanced at the puppet on the ground, then back at me, his expression shifting from anger to something like worry. "You shouldn't be out here. It's not safe. The puppets, they're not just toys. They were part of a performance, an old story." "Performance?" I echoed, confused. "What story?" His gaze flickered to the shadows around us, as if expecting something to emerge. Thomas was different. He had a talent. He could bring them to life. But it got out of hand. Now they're not right. They want something. "Want what?" I pressed, heart thundering. I had no idea if I could trust him, but I felt the urgency of the situation creeping in. To play. They like to play games with those who find them. You should go back inside. His warning felt genuine, but I couldn't turn my back now. "We have to stop it," I said, picking up the clown puppet again. "No, don't touch it," he shouted, making me jump. "It's too late for that one. You need to leave it. The others, they're just waiting for their chance." "What do you mean?" But as soon as I spoke, the laughter filled the air again, more menacing this time, echoing like a taunt. It came from every direction, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The man stepped closer, his eyes wide with fear. "Listen, if you're here when they come for you, they won't stop until they get what they want. You have to believe me." Just then, another figure stepped out from the darkness, this one small and hunched. My blood ran cold. It was one of the puppets, its eyes glinting in the moonlight. It looked like it had come to life, strings taut and ready. With a scream, I yanked my arm back, and the boy beside the puppet giggled, his laughter mingling with the puppet's. My previous nausea flared again, hitting me like a punch. The dim light flickered as more puppets started to emerge from the shadows. "Get inside, now," the neighbor urged, but I felt frozen. One puppet stepped closer, looking at me with a childlike smile that twisted my stomach. "Play with us," it said, its voice almost too cheerful. I knew I had to choose. I felt the darkness pressing in, and just when I thought I couldn't stand any longer, the neighbor pushed me toward the door. "Run!" he commanded as chaos erupted behind me. The puppets began to move, dancing in an unnatural rhythm, their laughter intertwining with the sudden chaos. I tore back to the house, fear propelling my legs. But as I reached the door, I heard the most chilling words echo behind me. "The game has just begun." I slammed the door shut, locking it behind me, my breath coming in rapid gasps. The sound of laughter filled the house, and I knew it wasn't over. Something had changed, and I needed to figure out what before it was too late. In that moment, as I slid down against the door, dread settled in my stomach. I realized I hadn't just found a puppet. I had stumbled into a nightmare. I sat in the dim light of the living room, my heart still racing. The laughter outside faded, but I could still feel its echo in my bones. I was safe in my house, but that provided little comfort. I needed to know what I was up against.
I pushed myself off the floor and moved cautiously towards the window. Taking a deep breath, I peeked through the curtain. The yard was empty. The puppets vanished like shadows at dawn. A sense of unease washed over me. Where had they gone? Just then, I remembered the man, the neighbor who had warned me. I needed to find him. Maybe he knew more about what was happening. I got my phone and dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. "This is serious," I whispered to myself. "You can't just disappear after telling me that." I paced the room, feeling trapped. The walls seemed to close in. I had to get out. I grabbed my jacket and unlocked the door again, peeking outside. The street looked normal, but something felt off. I started toward his house, trying to shake off the unease pooling in my stomach. I didn't want to think about the puppets or their laugh. I needed answers before it consumed me. Each crack in the pavement felt like a reminder of the horror from earlier. Reaching his house, I knocked hard on the door. There was no answer. I knocked again, calling out, "Hey, it's me. Can you come out? We need to talk." Silence hung in the air. Then I noticed something strange. A lantern flickering near the side of his yard. It wasn't there before. I walked towards it, my pulse quickening. The light danced wildly, casting eerie shadows across the grass. As I moved closer, I caught sight of a puppet standing next to the lantern. It was a small marionette clown, grinning from ear to ear. My stomach turned. Was it a trick? Had he left it there on purpose? I hesitated, then reached out for it. As my fingers brushed the cold wood, chills shot through me. The moment I touched it, the ground beneath my feet trembled, almost as if responding to my action. I jerked back, heart racing.
"Play with us," a familiar voice called from behind me. It was the small puppet, its childish tone echoing in the night air. I turned to see several figures emerging from the shadows. They were moving closer, the laughter rising again. Panic surged within me. I stumbled back, but the puppets had formed a semicircle, blocking my path. "Not again!" I yelled, backing away. Just then, I heard a door creak open behind me. I quickly glanced back to see the neighbor standing at his front door, eyes wide and filled with fear. "Get inside!" he shouted, waving frantically. "You're in danger!" "Where are the puppets?" I cried, trying to understand what was happening. But he didn't answer. Instead, his face went pale and he pointed behind me. I turned, and my breath caught in my throat. The puppets were no longer just standing. They were advancing, their laughter growing louder, more insistent. Before I could react, a piercing scream cut through the chaos. It was my neighbor. "Run!" he shouted, and I didn't need another warning. I bolted back toward his house, the sound of the puppets trailing behind me. Inside, I slammed the door again. It was only when the lock clicked that I felt a momentary sense of relief. But it didn't last. The laughter resumed, closer now, and I knew the game was far from over. That's when I saw the message on his living room wall, written in thick, dark letters. "You cannot escape." I stood there, staring at the wall, the message haunting me. It felt alive, taunting. I turned to the neighbor, desperate for answers. "What do they want? Why is this happening?" He glanced around, eyes wide with panic. "We need to hide. They're drawn to fear. If they sense it, they won't stop." The urgency in his voice sank in, but I didn't understand how he knew so much. "Who are they?" I asked, trying to process the chaos. "They are," he hesitated, eyes darting, "puppets out for revenge. You've probably seen them before, but now they know you can hear them." My heart sank.
I remembered those nights, laughter echoing through the streets, shadows in the corners of my vision. Revenge for what? Games we played long ago, he replied, his voice trembling. I thought they were gone, but they never left. Before I could ask more, a loud thud resonated from the door. I jumped, heart racing again. The puppets were here. I backed away, sticking close to my neighbor. Is there a way out? There's a basement, he said, pointing toward the door leading to a hallway. We need to go now. We darted through the connecting door, and I could hear the laughter growing outside. It was chaotic, akin to a twisted carnival. My skin prickled with dread. As we hurried to the basement steps, I caught a glimpse of something under the door. A puppet's foot, clutching a marionette string. It was using it like a key, testing the latch. I gasped, "They're trying to get in!" My neighbor shoved me down the stairs and followed closely, slamming the door behind us. There was a dim light flickering in the basement, casting long shadows. The air grew colder, and strange whispers echoed, sending chills down my spine. "What do we do now?" I whispered, my eyes scanning the dark corners. "Stay quiet and hope," he replied, crouching down. "They might lose interest here, but we can't stay long." I nodded, feeling the weight of fear settle in my chest. It was suffocating down here. The puppet's laughter erupted again, louder now, mixed with the sound of scraping wood and clattering strings. Then I noticed a strange painting on the wall. It was a chaotic scene, depicting dancing puppets around a bonfire. I squinted, trying to make sense of it. In the corner, a symbol caught my eye. It looked like a part of my neighbor's yard. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the painting. "It's the same symbol from the lantern outside." My neighbor paled. "That means they've targeted you. You're part of their game now. We need to leave." Before I could respond, there was a loud crash upstairs, followed by heavy footsteps. The puppets were coming into the house. "They found another way," he whispered, panic surging through him. I felt a jolt of adrenaline. "We can't just sit here." "Our only chance is to find a way out through the back," he said, but just as he turned to lead the way, the basement lights flickered dramatically and went out, plunging us into darkness. In that moment, the whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like a noose. I couldn't tell where the sounds were coming from. Then, a new realization hit me. Someone was in the basement with us. I held my breath, frozen in place. The darkness pressed in around us, thick and suffocating. My mind raced as I strained to hear any indication of who or what was in the basement with us. The whispers shifted, growing more distinct. "Do you hear that?" I finally whispered to my neighbor, my voice barely a tremor. He nodded, eyes wide, scanning the shadows. "Just stay still. Don't move," he replied, his voice shaking. I could feel his fear radiating off him. The whispers twisted, forming words that sent a chill down my spine. "Join the dance," they beckoned, echoing eerily. "Join the game." I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. What did they mean? My mind raced back to the painting. Dancing puppets, the bonfire. Was it all part of a twisted ritual? And then I felt it. A light touch on my shoulder. I jumped and spun around, looking through the darkness. Nothing was there. My heart pounded. "Did you touch me?" I asked, panic rising in my throat. "No, it wasn't me," he whispered urgently. The footsteps above us thudded heavily, closer now. The windows shattered with laughter, echoing up the stairs like a sinister chorus. I thought of the puppet's foot at the door earlier, how it tested the latch. I could almost see the strings being pulled, directing our fates. "Look," my neighbor said, squinting.
The light flickered back on suddenly, illuminating the basement just enough for me to see the cold concrete walls surrounding us. But what caught my attention was a figure now standing at the far end of the room. It was shadowy and indistinct, but it moved. I took a step back, my pulse quickening. It wasn't just a figment of my imagination. "What is that?" I gasped. "I don't know," he said, fear raw in his voice. "Stay close." As we backed away, I realized the figure was holding something. A marionette. My breath caught when I recognized the puppet. It was modeled after me, with a twisted, exaggerated face carved from wood. "Why is it like that?" I asked, horrified. "It's not just you," he gasped. "Look," my neighbor pointed. A line of puppets sat against the wall, all twisted versions of people I recognized from our neighborhood. Friends, neighbors, faces I'd seen every day. "What does this mean?" I shouted, closing my eyes for a moment, hoping it would all disappear. But when I opened them, the marionette was a foot closer. "Join the dance," it whispered again, and I could feel the darkness around me shift. "Run!" my neighbor yelled. With that, I turned, grabbing his hand and bolting toward the basement door. But as we reached it, it slammed shut, locking us in. We were trapped. The puppets, now animated, were advancing, their strings stretching and curling, ready to entangle us. I heard their laughter echoing back at us, mingling with the whispers, a growing cacophony of chaos. Just when I thought all hope was lost, I noticed a crack in the back wall, a sliver of light seeping through. "There!" I shouted, pulling my neighbor toward it. "Let's go!" As we sprinted toward the light, I felt the rush of relief mixed with terror. But then a voice broke through the laughter. "You can't escape the game." And in that chilling moment, I understood. It wasn't just a game anymore. We were part of something much darker. I grabbed the crack, pulling hard, and just as we broke free, I felt an unseen force trying to pull me back. I gasped as the darkness closed in, clutching my neighbor's arm tightly. "We're not finished yet." But as we fell through the opening, everything went black, and I lost all sense of where I was. Then everything went dark. I woke up on the cold, hard ground, gasping for breath. The air was thick with a wet chill. My heart raced as I pushed myself up. "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice trembling as I scanned the dim surroundings. "Yeah," my neighbor replied, shaking his head as he rubbed his temples. "Where are we?" I turned my head, trying to get my bearings. We were in some kind of alley, narrow and cramped, flanked by towering brick walls that seemed to loom over us. The light filtering through was weak, casting distorted shadows. I felt a shiver slide down my spine. "Do you think... is it still after us?" I ventured, half expecting to see the marionette figures looming in the shadows. But there was nothing, just silence. "I don't know," he replied, his face pale. "We have to find a way out." We pushed ourselves off the ground and moved cautiously, keeping close to each other. The silence was oppressive, and I could hear my heartbeat ringing in my ears. The whispers stopped, but the laughter lingered in the back of my mind. I scanned the alley for any exit. It felt endless, stretching far beyond what should have been possible. Then an eerie sound broke through. The creaking of wood against wood. I froze. "What was that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Probably a door," he said, but his eyes flicked nervously to the shadows. I could feel my gut tighten. "Let's go toward it," I suggested, forcing my feet to move. We walked, each step drawing us closer to the sound. The alley seemed to close in around us, the walls shifting as if they had a life of their own. Then we turned a corner, and my breath caught. In front of us was a weathered old door, the wood splintered and covered in strange carvings, twisted figures dancing around a bonfire.
"What do you think it means?" my neighbor asked. "Maybe it's just a door. We should knock," I said, a sarcastic edge betraying my own fear. He didn't laugh. Just then, a scratchy voice echoed from above us, sending us both stumbling back. "Are you ready to join the dance?" We whipped around, looking up. On the roof across from us stood a shadowy figure, its outline cluttered with wooden marionettes, all of them staring down at us with hollow eyes. "What do we do?" he asked, panic rising in his voice again. Then the door creaked open slightly, a sliver of warm light spilling out. I hesitated but felt something pull me closer. "We have to go inside," I said, though doubt gnawed at me. "But what if it's a trap?" he questioned, backing away. Before I could respond, the figure laughed again. "The dance will continue. You can't escape." The laughter rolled like thunder, echoing down the alley, drowning out everything else. I grabbed my neighbor's hand, clenching it tightly. "We don't have a choice." Without waiting for him to respond, I pushed through the door, and he followed. Inside, the warmth engulfed us, but it felt wrong, tainted. The room was filled with puppets, their strings glittering as they swung rhythmically. My breath hitched again. And that's when I saw it. A puppet in the center of the room, its head slowly turning. It was a grotesque version of myself, just like in the basement. It grinned, the same twisted smile that haunted my nightmares. Wait, what was happening? The door slammed shut behind us. We weren't finished yet. The game had just begun. I stumbled back against the door, heart racing as the laughter echoed around us, weaving through the chaos like a sinister melody. The room was dim, illuminated by flickering gaslights that cast long shadows across the walls.
The puppets lined the edges, their painted eyes glinting in the half-light, as if eagerly waiting for the show to begin. As I turned to see my neighbor, he was frozen in place, transfixed by the grotesque puppet that replicated my form so disturbingly well. "It's not really me," I whispered, more to myself than to him. But the puppet's grin widened, as if it understood the very essence of my fear. "We have to find a way out," I urged, my voice trembling. The laughter morphed, gaining a rhythm that rattled against my bones. It felt alive, wrapping around us like a thick fog. "They'll come for us," he murmured, panic rising in his voice. "We can't let them take us." I scanned the room, desperate for an exit, but every wall seemed sealed tight. The puppets closer to us began to sway, their strings dancing lightly in a mockery of life. I remembered the whispers, the laughter from before. It all felt like a cruel game, a sick performance we'd unwittingly stumbled into. "Look, a door!" I pointed across the room, spotting a faint outline near the puppet stage, draped in shadows. But before we could make a move, the grotesque puppet of myself stepped forward, its movements sinuous and calculated, its strings creaking. "Join us," it crooned, its voice mocking and taunting, fading in and out of reality. A chill settled over me. I glanced at my neighbor, our fears intertwining as we realized the danger had never truly left us. Before I knew it, the puppets advanced, their laughter filling the air, and I felt something within me shift. I didn't know if it was fear or some instinct to fight back, but my legs propelled me forward. "Run!" I shouted, dragging my neighbor along. We dashed toward the door, but just as I reached for the handle, an unseen force slammed it shut, trapping us inside the macabre performance. "We can't stay here," he yelled over the laughter, which morphed into a cacophony of whispers. They were incoherent but chillingly familiar, echoing memories just beyond my grasp. I felt the puppets closing in, hungry for more than just play.
"Back to the basement," I suggested, pointing to a hatch I had missed before. "There might be another way out." We made our way towards it, hearts pounding as the puppets twisted and danced around us. As we reached the hatch, I turned the knob, but it resisted. "Come on," I grunted, pulling more forcefully. At that moment, the puppet, the one mimicking me, spoke again, its voice subduing the surrounding chaos. "Don't you want to stay with us? The game is so much fun." "No," I shouted defiantly, shoving against the door. The laughter subsided for just a moment, and I could feel the shifting weight of dread in the air. "He's lying," my neighbor yelled, pushing against the door beside me. "They just want to trap us. We can't let them win." With that, we both slammed our bodies against the hatch, desperate and determined. The door creaked loudly, but finally it burst open. "We can't stay here," he yelled over the laughter, which morphed into a cacophony of whispers. They were incoherent, but chillingly familiar, echoing memories just beyond my grasp. I felt the puppets closing in, hungry for more than just play. "Back to the basement," I suggested, pointing to a hatch I had missed before. "There might be another way out." We made our way towards it, hearts pounding, as the puppets twisted and danced around us. As we reached the hatch, I turned the knob, but it resisted. "Come on," I grunted, pulling more forcefully. At that moment, the puppet, the one mimicking me, spoke again, its voice subduing the surrounding chaos. "Don't you want to stay with us? The game is so much fun." "No," I shouted defiantly, shoving against the door. The laughter subsided for just a moment, and I could feel the shifting weight of dread in the air. "He's lying," my neighbor yelled, pushing against the door beside me. "They just want to trap us. We can't let them win." With that, we both slammed our bodies against the hatch, desperate and determined. The door creaked loudly, but finally it burst open. We tumbled down a set of rickety stairs into darkness, landing hard on cold concrete. "Are you okay?" I gasped, looking at my neighbor, breathless. "I think so," he panted, helping me to my feet. "Where do we go?" "Anywhere but here." I looked around. The basement was cluttered but undisturbed, shadows stretching like whispers. I could still hear the lingering laughter above, but its intensity had dulled. We stumbled further into the dark, our footsteps muffled against the floor. Then, almost instinctively, I turned and spotted a small window at the far end, barely illuminated by the moonlight breaking through the grime. It was our way out. "Here," I pointed, relief washing over my face as we sprinted toward the window. But as we drew nearer, I felt a prickle down my spine. Something was very wrong. Suddenly, the laughter erupted again, now inside the basement, echoing off the walls and enveloping us. Shadows retracted and spread like ink, and from the darkness emerged the puppets, all clambering toward us with their wooden limbs outstretched. "Faster!" I urged, but my heart sank as I heard the familiar voice again. "Join the game!" With adrenaline pumping, I reached for the window and yanked it open. My neighbor hesitated as more darkness spread, a whirlpool of shadows closing in on us. "Come on," I gasped, pulling him towards the opening. But as he began to climb through, the puppets surged forward, laughter blending into whispers of, "Join us." In one frantic push, I thrusted my body against the encroaching figures, staying my ground. "Go!" I screamed, forcing him through as I felt the weight of the puppets latch onto my arms, pulling me back. I felt the last vestiges of my freedom slipping away. "Don't look back!" I shouted, desperately trying to fight against their grip as my heart raced. In that moment, a decision tore through me, a choice between succumbing and holding on to something beyond this nightmare. With every ounce of strength, I tore myself free long enough to crash through the window too.
I felt the glass shards bite into my skin as I pushed through the opening and rolled out onto the grass, gasping for fresh air. I didn't stop to catch my breath. I sprinted toward the street, adrenaline surging through me. Behind me, the cacophony reached a fever pitch, the puppets' laughter trailing off into the silence of the night. As I dashed down the road, I glanced back one last time. The house stood in stillness, indifferent to my escape. I could feel the lingering weight of that horrible night. What had occurred behind those walls would never truly leave me. I moved to a different city after that. I avoided dark alleyways and strange sounds, forever listening for laughter carried by the wind. I still wonder if those puppets still dance, waiting for someone else to join their game, and if the memory of that summer will always linger in the shadows. But I know one thing for sure. I can never return to that neighborhood again.
The game had changed everything, and I knew some mysteries are better left unsolved.